Hi hobby friends, let's talk about underpainting. Alright, I feel like shaking things up a bit for this video. We're going to start with the reveal. Space Marines, everyone's favourite overgrown Lego men, and even I have to admit, always a pleasure to paint. Nice, big, open, simple shapes that take shading like a dream. But we aren't here to talk Space Marines. What colour are these guys? Which one is your favourite? Have you got any ideas what paints I used for those different shades? Well, the answer is Pyrrole Red Ink. Just one paint. And yet, look at that, 5 completely different shades. Okay, so there's no mystery about how it's done, I've put the answer in the title of the video, but why is underpainting interesting and what can you do with it? Let's take a look. So, while I get a red base coat on this guy, let's cover the basics. Chances are you've done some kind of underpainting before. If you've ever done a zenithal prime, you've underpainted. And if you want to sound really fancy, you could even call it grisaille. It's a grey-scale underpaint that informs and influences your lighting and volumes. Grisaille and transparent paints like Citadel's Contrast range, or Scale Colour's Instant Colour, is fast becoming the most popular painting method, if mini painting YouTube is anything to go by, but the technique can offer so much more. Okay, next chap is going to get a coat of green, but I'm doing it over a black base for 2 reasons. One, because this green paint doesn't grab quite as nicely as I'd like for a base coat, and 2, when I go over with red later, I'll actually be being quite delicate, and I don't want to have to flood my recesses to cover up the green completely. A black base will mean my deepest recesses will stay nice and dark. What I'm finding with my underpainting experiments is that to get the most out of what you're doing, you need to make bold colour choices. So this is a nice vibrant green that would look a little weird in my deep shadows by itself. Green man is done, now time for Mr. Blue. The main reason for bold colour choices is that with underpainting we're relying on filtering to develop our palette. Pigments mix subtractively, which is just a fancy way of saying the more different hues, excluding white, that you mix together, the more towards black your colour will move. By starting vibrant, we make sure we have loads of room to modulate our contrast from nice bright highs to rich lows. Still got another troll trader tall boy, so let's do another colour. I'm interested in seeing what the violet end of the spectrum will do. Purples, violets, magentas and the rest of that ilk are really interesting colours because they don't exist on the light spectrum natively, you have to wrap it up into a wheel to get them. But that's a deep theory thought we can maybe tackle some other time. For now, let's marvel at the beauty of a purple marine. Right, speeding through an experiment is no excuse not to get decent volume shading, so let's throw down some zenithal colours. But we're not going with boring old white. If you've watched any of my videos, you'll know that I underpaint almost all my red with yellow, and this already red chap is no exception. Lovely. Next, let's get a yellowy beige on the green man. I want to keep in the warm, bright portion of the spectrum here, but we're already seeing what yellow looks like on the red guy, so why not try something else? Over the blue, we're going with more blue. And then when I realise the value of the blue is still too low, I'll go over with even more blue, but a little bit lighter. The real colour wheel shows us that the blue cyan area of the spectrum is the furthest from our target colour of red, so we can already predict that this is going to end up pretty dark. Dark is fine, but we still want value contrast, so we need to push that high value up nice and high. Okay, so last chap is Mr. Mr. Purple, and for his highlight, I'm laying in some pink. So by now you might be asking yourself, what's the point? And that's a fair question. The first clue that this underpainting technique isn't a complete waste of time is that canvas and fresco painters have been underpainting their masterpieces for literally hundreds of years. And as much as I love mini painting, it's hard to deny that the collective wisdom of fine arts painting has a slightly longer history to draw on. Need to mix up some red now, and I'm using only Pyrrole Red Ink for all of these. Now, red ink tends to be really, really, really strong, so even though it says transparent on the bottle, I'm going to thin this down a lot. I want to give it some body too, to make it a little easier to manage through the airbrush, so I'm using Flow Improver as my thinning agent. This isn't just a blast it and you're done situation either, you're still painting, so there's a bit of thinking involved. Where do you want the red to be the most punchy? That's where you should be building up more layers. Where are your shadows? Maybe that's the spot to leave the red a little thinner, allowing more of your underpaint to show through. It's not always intuitive, so you have to take your time and stay with the mini. Try not to go into an airbrush daze like I do sometimes. While I finish up in reddening these boys, let's get back to the why of underpainting. The short answer is depth. While a grisaille zenithal is good for setting up lighting, it doesn't do much for your colour. Those old masters understood that by mixing up their pigments in layers on the canvas, you built up colour depth that was much harder to achieve with regular blending techniques. Take a look at this. This is me mixing the very paints I used for this project, but just as wet paints on my palette. This kind of blending is okay, but it can leave you with a desaturated, muddy looking colour. Fine if you're, say, Nurgle, but probably not appropriate for a mighty blood angel or a nefarious word bearer. And optically blending on the mini with underpainting is also much more repeatable, and I think it's even more efficient. It takes just a few steps to render all your hue, saturation, and value information. The red is all done, but you know what? No collection is complete without a shiny, so let's grab that last Forda Emperor Zealot and give him a gunmetal base and a silver zenithal. You can do some super funky and crazy stuff with inks over metallics. Check the link in the corner or the description for an exploration of that, but here, this guy is also serving as a sort of reference for what a black and white sketch might have looked like, since silver is basically just shiny grey. Alright, done with the red now, so I'm going to throw some matte varnish on all but Mr. Shiny, work out the details like some silver trim, the leather, the guns, etc., and then, what may be Mini Painting YouTube's very first re-reveal. I've painted the eyes of each guy to represent his underpaint colour, so you can see we're starting with the red-yellow guy here. Really vibrant red, pushing into the orange portion of the spectrum as you'd expect. Weirdly, with a few more spikes and skulls, I could see this on a World Eater, since they're so frequently depicted as a vibrant scarlet colour. Here is the green guy, and this is a really, really great solid red, like you might see on a classic Blood Angel. The green really pushes the red into a rich but neutral brown shadow colour. Really solid look. Blue up next, and just look how cool this guy is. Underpainting is a fantastic way to build up a sense of environment, and I can just picture this guy on a cold snow base, or get some warm OSL in there somewhere to transform the look into a believable but punchy nighttime look. Love it. Silver shiny now, and my least favourite of the bunch, to be honest. Personally, I find the high gloss finish a bit distracting on the smaller surfaces of an infantry model, but those are just my feelings. For some people, especially Angels of Death fans, this is going to be the one. Last up, and this is my personal favourite, the Violet Warrior. Such an unusual and gorgeous tone on this, with enough coolness in the purple to push those shadows into really vibrant and rich tones, but enough warmth to allow the red to sing in the highlights. Man, there is something about this colour combo that is really doing it for me. Okay, that's all of them. What do you think? Who's your favourite? And what sort of colour combos do you fancy trying? I'm thinking of making this into a little mini-series exploring every corner of the colour wheel, so if you're into that idea, let me know. And if you like what's going on the channel, consider hitting those thumbs up and subscribe buttons to help more people find the video. Cheers!